Yeah, like spaghetti. You want me to take you somewhere?
I think there's someone.
Okay. Well, maybe later.
Or if you want to come
I'll
get
take you
coffee.
somewhere. Why don't you go get coffee? Costco. Oh.
Hello. It's the mic that's panned all the way to that side for some reason.
Yeah, I think this one too.
All right.
Well, I noticed it when I was back there before.
I'm glad I got that one, I guess. It's unique. What's that? Yeah.
One more person.
Hi everybody, my name is Marley and I'm PR Chair for MEISA, and I hope you're having an amazing time so far at our 5th annual conference. We're about to begin our record production panel, and I hope you are all excited to hear the insight from our great panelists. We have Jason Spiewak, Paul Womack, Paul Falcone, Holden, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Jaffe, also known as Del Water Gap, and we've got Chris Sclafani, so give it up for them.
Sure, why not? Well, thank you guys very much for being here on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. It speaks to your level of commitment to learning things, potentially. At least you're making it possible instead of enjoying this beautiful Saturday afternoon, which I'm sure we'll all be enjoying at some point. Before we get too hot and heavy, I thought it might just be wise to give my esteemed panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. Paul, you want to kick it off?
Sure. My name is Paul Womack, also known as Willie Green, from Brooklyn, New York. I'm a producer, engineer, studio owner. You know, in the modern industry, we all kind of do a lot of those things, wear a lot of those hats, so I do a little bit of everything.
I'm Paul Falcone. I'm a freelancer. I've been doing this about 20-25 years. I came up through the large format studio system. We started as an intern, worked my way up to engineer. Pretty quickly, the studio I came up out of, I had a lot of internships. I assisted at a lot of different studios, but I spent 12 years at a studio called the Hit Factory, which was a major studio through many decades. But I was there through the 90s and early 2000s. Got to work on a ton of pop records. When I left the Hit Factory, I retained a lot of those clients. I've been working out in my own private studio space for a long time. Now I have a studio that I'm developing out in Suffolk County called the Resident Studios. It's a destination studio. Worked on a lot of cool pop records. That's about it. Awesome.
I'm Holden. I am an artist, and I perform as Del Water Gap. And yeah, we're to produce some pop music for people. Got to LA once in a while to do that. I went to Clive Davis, which is a program sort of like this one, I think. Learned all that good stuff. Based in Brooklyn. Happy to be here.
Hi, Chris Sclafani. I'm a producer, engineer, based in Manhattan. I have a studio that I work out of in Midtown, where I work with my clients. I cut my teeth in New York at a studio called Downtown Studios, and like Paul said, I was an intern for a while, and you get to be an assistant engineer, then an engineer, and kind of grow from there. That's where I am now.
Awesome. Well, I'll give you a little bit about my background. I'm a studio musician and songwriter by way of a Warner Music record company called Rockridge Music. I was the president of that label for 8 years. I left that job in January of 2013 to be an independent artist manager, and I run an imprint called Noble Steep Music these days. When Terry and Suze and the fine folks here invited me to be a part of moderating a panel on production, it was very exciting to me, having just produced my first record in 10 years for a band consisting of like 4 other dads, suburbanite New Jerseyans who happened to be musicians in their former lives. And so we wrote songs for the sheer joy of it. I produced an EP, and such was my getting thrown back into the water of record producing. That said, over the course of the last 2 decades, I've been a part of making records, been a studio musician, seen songs from inception to success. Most notably, I signed Rachel Platten to her first record deal through Rockridge, and she went on to write Fight Song, and I was part of the tribe that helped her, behind closed doors, craft that tune into the mega hit that it was. Wish I got a piece of the writing, but what are you gonna do? We should probably talk a little bit about that, maybe just about song inception and how important the early days of songcraft are, and what it means to put a tune together before it sees the light of day. What do you guys think about that as a starter? Cool, how about it? Who's gonna jump on it? Cool. All right. Well, glad you guys are here.
When you say that, where do you want to start? Or if you guys have any questions, maybe we can start with, because that's kind of broad.
It is broad. Well, they'll funnel us down there, and then we'll open the Q&A second half.
Okay. Well, the biggest thing to me is there needs to be some degree of urgency when you're working on a song. The hardest thing for me is when someone starts working on a song and they want to work on it for months or years. I've, recently worked with some independent projects, and when it's indie projects, people are making all the decisions for themselves, and without that team of people to sort of push the process along, they can really get caught up and stuck on one idea. I'm working with this one girl right now. She's been working on the song for about 2 years. I just started working on to help her finish this song. And she's just so married to these ideas that she's been floating around with for a very, very long time. Some of the best records I've ever worked on, they're conceived of and they're made, I don't want to say they're rushed, because they're definitely not rushed, but there is a sense of urgency to get the song out and get the music done. It's sort of like don't overthink it. You'll hear a lot about pop songwriting where, songs are written quickly. Songs are written with some degree of urgency. They're not overthought. If an idea isn't working, move on to the next idea. Don't keep, beating that first idea to hell. If it's not working out, move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that. One of my big production philosophies, whether it's for writing or beat making or especially mixing, is don't get precious about things. You might be in a mix and you might have worked 2 hours on this awesome vocal effect, and the singer comes in and they hate it. What are you gonna do? Spend 2 more hours trying to convince them? You can't. That's not how it works. It's a service industry.
I completely agree with that, and I can identify with that. Where this happened in downtown, actually. I was working on something, I was working with Theophilus London, and he went out to go have a phone conversation about something. And I had time, so I sat there working on a vocal effect for a long time, way longer than I would normally ever work on a vocal effect, because I had the time. We weren't really doing anything. I was waiting for him to get off the phone. And I think Rich was the assistant. And he walked in and he was like, I don't like that. And I just said, no problem. Switched on, we had to do something else. So he's like, you just worked on that for like an hour and a half, and he didn't like it, and you're just okay with that? I'm like, I don't really care. I'm not that invested in this one vocal effect that we're doing. I just had the time to work on it. When you're working with artists, I think it's really important to understand who is the face of that record. You have to understand that you're trying to get their vision to come across. I mean, it depends on who the producers, who the artist is, the type of situation that is this person really like a manufactured artist where it's a team creating that vision? Or is it their vision that you're helping bring to fruition? And I've seen, especially up-and-coming engineers or up-and-coming producers, take it really personally when someone doesn't like something that they're doing. And to me, that's a big mistake. You can't take it personally. It's about, if I really believe in something and if someone is really disliking it and I feel like I have to lobby to get that point across, I will absolutely do that. But I also have to take into account that it's a collaborative effort, and if someone doesn't like something, let's change it into something that everyone can agree with.
I agree, if I could just jump on that. At the end of the day, it's their name on the song, it's them on stage performing it. It's completely their call. Like you said, if there's something you feel really strongly about, definitely it's worth fighting for just a little bit. If you're not getting your point across, you're just wasting time. A lot of times they'll see your side, but again, at the end of the day, they're the ones singing it. They're the, you know, it's their name you're typing in to Spotify or whatever to hear this one song.
Right, from the artist perspective, I think I agree with all of this. And as someone who has, I went to school for production, and I write my music, so I've done a lot of my work in a vacuum by myself, and I've been able to ruminate for years over songs like you're talking about. And it isn't always productive. And I think the thing that you guys are all talking about, I mean, you put it well, like it's a service industry. I think that's true. But I also think for a lot of artists, the dream is to be surrounded with engineers, producers, etc., that they really trust and can feel like they're sharing a vision with, you know? And that takes time. I think it's the same with co-writing. You know, you can co-write every day, but maybe 1 in 30 will really be productive and feel mutually beneficial. And so, yeah, I think it is important to be prolific and work with a lot of people, and, you know, try to do a session every day if you can. But also, it's good to have a team, people that you trust, you can work with, because, yeah, honesty is hard to come by, and kind honesty. I think even, you know, some of these panels, you know, people's work being critiqued in a room, it's scary, and I think that's good sometimes, but also in the record-making process, it's good to have kindness and people that are honest with you, can respect where you're coming from.
I think it's really I think it's really important that you said a team that you can trust, because that is, you know, I have to, when I'm working with an artist, I have to gain their trust, and also that relationship has to gel. Like, we have to understand, when I have to understand the artist and they have to understand where I'm coming from. They have to be able to trust me with their product and trust that I'm going to do a good job with it, and sort of understand that I'm not going to make it my vision. I mean, people do come to me because they want to know, they want what I'm bringing to the project, but at the same time, I don't, you know, I have to interpret every project for what that specific project needs from me. What I do find is when an artist is surrounded by a team that they can't trust, or when they start trusting the wrong people, that's when the project goes astray. It is really important to find people that you can trust, and that it's a collaborative relationship. I also like what you said about it might be like 1 in 30. You know, someone once put it to me, you know, even when it comes to like writing songs or placing songs, it's kind of a numbers game sometimes, where, you know, say, even if you're a very prolific songwriter, you know, you might find that like 1 out of 5 songs is really good. So that just means you got to keep writing, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 songs. You keep getting those, you know, one hit song after another. It might take you, you know, 50 songs to get 10 hit songs out of those 50. You know, you have to just keep working on new music. And if, you know, it might be that you're 1 out of 50, so that means you got to, you know, write 200 songs to get, you know, 4 hit songs out of that. Some other people are much luckier than that, and it's like, you know, every other song is a hit song for them.
That's good perspective, man, if I can jump on that for a second. So I recently met with a songwriter in LA, a guy named Sam Hollander, who has a number of current hits. But he was 34 when he had his first hit record, having been chipping away at it steadily since he left school at 21. He now lives in LA, which is, if any of you know Sam, he's like the most New York guy, always with the Yankees hat. He's never coming back, which is so sad. But anyway, Sam's point was, you know, you really have to figure out what it is that you can bring to the table that's new and different, because so many folks are aspiring writers and want to sort of get a grip on the lowest rung of that ladder. And his best advice, in the context of a conversation about, you know, what would you tell someone looking to get into the business that's kind of new or unestablished, is to write. You know, crank out a song a week, at least 2 or 3, 4 if you have the time, because chances are your initial ideas are just going to come from your comfortable bag of tricks, and real gritty songwriting and honest writing tends to come much, much later after you've suffered and had your ass handed to you by life and or both.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, as you write more, you get better, you know? I mean, unless you're Steph Curry, you don't come out shooting a high percentage all the time, but you get better. The more songs you write, the better they'll become. You'll learn from those mistakes so that 1 in 50 turns into 1 in 30, 1 in 20, and now, you know, you're getting better and your output is getting stronger.
Yeah, and to jump on this, if you start a song and you don't see it really going anywhere, what I like to do is try to complete it. Don't abandon it. Try to complete the song and just say, great, I wrote a terrible song. Like, it's done. Maybe tomorrow I'll write a better one. I'll do something differently from what I did today. It's not terrible. Like, it's not the end of the world if you write a bad song or write 10 bad songs. One day, just all your hard work, it will pay off. You'll write a good song one day. Like they say, once you kind of get in that groove, it's going to start happening more and more. But there will be a lot of bad songs. It's just...
Yeah, it's so important to get comfortable writing bad songs. I had sort of a really interesting spiritual experience one time. I met this a winemaker, Vintner, is that what they're called? I think so. Hasidic Jewish guy, wonderful man. I was with him and I said, is making wine hard? And he said, well, I'll put it this way. The first year you make bad vinegar. The second year you make good vinegar. The third year you make bad wine. And by year 4 or 5 you're making good wine. So that's been my mantra, is make bad vinegar in service of making slightly better vinegar and hopefully some wine.
Well, and in the interest of bringing it all the way back around, so I love that, by the way, the bad vinegar bit. There's so much temptation now when you have your bad vinegar or whatever that looks like to sort of foist your underrepresented art on folks through SoundCloud or through whatever means. You guys want to touch on that? Like, when will you know it's done? When will you know it's ready to be presented?
That's the hardest question.
Well, define done. I always tell people done is a very relative term in my book. To me, done is when it's on its way to Spotify. And even then, like, people redo things. You know, they'll take it down off the streaming service and recut something and put it back.
Right, yeah, fit for consumer consumption.
You know, but when is it done? When it's, for me, that's when it's gone through all the approvals. But are you talking about when is a song done?
Yeah, when is a song ready? All right, so to be real specific, when is a song ready to be pushed through the Play-Doh Fun Factory of the studio, which is an instrument in and of itself?
You see, for me, most of the records I work on are conceived in the studio. You know, they are, and I think that that's an important, I mean, sure, sometimes people write outside the studio, but you know, most productive sessions I've ever done is where people are writing in the studio. A lot of that can happen at home now, but I think it's more, even the major artists that I've worked with, we have to get their home studio set up to a point where it's a very professional studio. And it's not like they're necessarily sitting at home by themselves getting a lot done. When they get a lot done is when they have that team of people like they have in a recording studio, whether it's going to be producers, engineers, musicians around them that are pushing the project forward. You know, to me, records are conceived in the studio, even if it's a home studio. It's not just sitting around, messing around, playing music. It's like taking it seriously.
Okay, well then to bring it back to the question, when is the song done in terms of completion? When do you want to introduce it to audiences?
If I could jump in, I think when you listen to the song and you feel everything you set out to feel, and you hear what you want to hear coming out of the speakers, that's the closest to done I think a song could be as a producer or as an artist. You know, there's a saying that songs are never done, they're abandoned, and that's kind of true, I feel, in a way, because at some point, all your hard work has to come out. If you feel for it, if you really believe in it, that's when it's time to share it with the world. And, you know, mixing and mastering is its own thing. If you feel what's coming out of the speakers, you can send it to those final steps to make sure that it's sculpted in a way that represents yourself and what you initially set out to achieve.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think talking about the feeling is the most important part of it. Like, we're not selling guitar tones, we're not selling 808s, we're selling emotions, right? Like that's what the song is giving you. So to me, when the story that the song is trying to tell is properly conveyed and you feel that, and you can visualize that picture of what's being said or rapped or sang, that's when it's there, you know? Like, you can tweak a song forever. You can completely overbake it. You can sit in your home studio and turn knobs forever and ever, and we've all done it. We'll all probably do it again. But I look at a song as a snapshot, you know? Like, it's a picture of that story at that time. That story could change tomorrow, so you can keep writing the story. Eventually, you gotta let go and put it out. So once the story, that chapter is complete, you know, then it's time to move on.
These are really good answers, and I'm guilty of kind of asking a stupid interview type question to this panel, and you guys crushed the answer, because it's not, there's no one size fits all answer to that question. It's really more philosophical, but I think there's a lot of meat on the bone with the answers that we just got.
I just want to add one thing to that is, I think it's important that whether you're working on, you can call it anything, working on a mix, working on a song, you kind of have to have a clear vision in your head of where the end is going to be. Otherwise, you will get stuck in that, you know, where you're tweaking on something forever. I know when I'm starting a project, even if it's like we're writing something from scratch, or someone's handing me like a demo that they have and they want me to flesh it out and turn it into a finished product, I'm immediately trying to hear or hearing the finished product in my head, and then it's a question of getting that, going after that. Not so much that I'm like lost in trying to figure out what to do next. Like I hear already in my head what has to happen next, and I'm going for that. That makes it a lot easier to figure out when you're done. I know when I'm done working on something and I'm ready to send it out, even if it's sending it out for approvals or to call it completely done, ready to get sent out to streaming services, it's when I can sit back and listen to it from beginning to end without stopping it. Meaning, there's nothing else that I want to change, nothing else that I want to fix, nothing else that I feel that can be better. And again, that's, you know, it's having a clear vision of where you want to go, and then being sure that you got it to that vision. And it's, you know, it's literally, when I'm working, especially once everything's been recorded, and now it's getting to the point where it's time to finish the mix or finish the production, it is about, I'm working on the song, so I'm kind of in sections at a time. It's rare that I'm listening from the song to beginning to end, like over and over and over again. I'm working on the individual sections, trying to get them all in shape where they're supposed to be. When I can finally sit down and listen to the song, like once from beginning to end, I'm like, okay, I think we're done. Let's do it maybe one more time, and then I know the song's pretty much done, because I'm not stopping it. You know, another point is kind of what you brought up. You know, you're right, we're not selling guitar tones. You know, we're not selling what outboard gear we use to record this. We're not selling if we mixed it on an SSL, or we mixed it in Pro Tools, or we use Logic. Nobody cares about any of that stuff. People just care about what's coming out of the speakers, you know, how good it makes them feel, you know, the feeling that they get from it, how good it sounds. And it doesn't really matter how it got there. If you use GarageBand, or if you booked, you know, a studio that's $2,500 a day to get that recorded, it does not matter, especially in 2019. It's just getting it the best you could possibly get it with whatever tools that you have.
Right on, Chris?
And I love what you said about listening to a song and not stopping it. Because there are so many times listening through a song and you have that temptation of, oh, you know what, maybe I can tweak that a little bit, but yeah, exactly. Do it. Like, don't give yourself an excuse to be like, I'll do it later, you know, let me send this out for approval, and if they like it, I'll just make that tweak real quick, and no one will know. It's tempting, especially when it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're just toast. If you can do it, just do it. Just get it done.
Yeah, it's more work, but like, this isn't supposed to be easy. Like, it's hard work to make records, you know? Like, that's why not everybody can do it. That's why we come to things like this, to learn how to do it properly. Do the extra work. That's what we're here for.
You have to.
Right, well that's what it is. What you're hearing, just to recap and bring up something brought up earlier, is, you know, good production is egoless. It'll be about delivering what the artist's vision is for that song, and putting in the extra hours and really fine-tuning and breaking the song down for the, you know, building it up by the sum of its parts and making it into a coherent piece of work. I feel like maybe we should kick it over to Q&A, but before we do, one last question for the panel. What's a really common mistake that an artist or writer can make that they should seek to avoid, especially in early days of their writing career or production career?
Can I answer that briefly? Is arguing about an idea in the studio. If someone has an idea and they want to try something, just try the idea. Do not spend an hour arguing about whether you should try that idea or not try that idea, or why you shouldn't try that idea, or if that idea is good or that idea is bad. Because it goes back to, all anybody really cares about is what it sounds like when it's coming out of those speakers. So try the idea. It is so not worth arguing over if you should give something a shot in the studio. Just do it.
How many hours I've wasted in the studio doing exactly that.
That drives me nuts when I see people do that, and I will try to break up that argument and be like, let's just try it. Because usually what's happening is it's turning into like something with egos. It's a battle of egos over why something can get tried or not get tried. You know, it's not a question of how good that idea may be or may not be. It's someone's ego is preventing someone else's ego from trying that idea. Like, get that out of the way, just try the idea, and that's why it's great to have a team round, because then the team can judge whether that idea is good or not.
And it can only take 2 or 3 minutes to try an idea.
And it'll take 3 hours to fight over it.
Exactly. Just do it.
Yeah, hard drive space is cheap.
Exactly. Playlist.
Do it, you know? Like we're not talking about reels, we're not spending that kind of dough, just try it, right? If it doesn't work, well then you won the argument, you know? see how it goes. It might be great.
Coming back to the question though, I think something that could really harm an artist, especially in the early stages, is trying to emulate somebody else, something that's already popular.
But can I interject? Would you say that music is often referencing itself? Like, it's very rare that you find something in music that is completely unique, that has never been done before.
Well, my main point being, be inspired by something or many things, but don't be a carbon copy of one thing, just one thing. It's got to come from multiple places. Yeah, you have to be inspired by a lot of things, so you can inspire things within yourself or for other people.
Right. That's a good point. I mean, really, it's all been done. But if it's you're sort of the melting pot for all of these disparate elements. You want to cop the drum feel from a certain track that inspired you, and then you have your own melody in your head and your own lyrics, but you kind of like the guitar tone from this track, and so it's about, you know, distilling all those elements down and then having a representation of your artistry that comes out that makes you feel things. Because again, I think as Paul said so brilliantly, we are selling emotions at the end of the day. Did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think the main thing that I struggled with early, and I still struggle with it, is just expending resources in the wrong way. Like being busy rather than being productive. I know that when I first started playing in a band, I would spend a lot of energy sequencing the record I hadn't made yet, and designing the stickers for the band I didn't have yet, and thinking about the labels I was getting signed to, even though I didn't have a record. I think it's really common to with writers sort of getting obsessed with the idea of signing a pub deal or signing a record deal, and thinking that the day that you sign a publishing deal is when you can begin to be a songwriter or when you can begin your career. But I think the best thing you can do for yourself is just get really good. And I think someone said earlier, just realizing what you can bring to the table and realizing what is singular about what you can bring to the table as an artist or a producer, finding what that is and just getting really, really good at it, and sort of pushing, the chaff out of the way, like not getting too caught up.
Write all the bad songs.
Write all the bad songs.
So you have good songs, so you can get the book deal and you can get a record.
Exactly. I mean, it's funny. There's this thing that I feel like is becoming increasingly common, that are these bands that just don't seem like a real band. They're online or they're on Spotify, and you're just like, is this real? Like, what's going on here? And I think it's just good to try to actually be really good at what you're doing, and having that be the foundation for all the rest of it.
Yeah, I would add to that, be patient and be kind to yourself. Like, you're not supposed to be great on day one. You have to go through those bad songs, just like we're talking about, but understand your talents and what you do bring to the table and what you're strong with, and recognize what skills you need to learn, and be honest about that. And then, either you generate your team and you put those people around you and you use their strengths, and you also can learn from them and build those skills as well. I think our culture gets really fascinated when teenagers do something, and it's like, oh, they're brilliant, they're 15. Okay, cool, but it doesn't mean that you can't also be brilliant when you're 35, when you're 45, or whatever. This is a journey you learn as you're going. If you know everything at 15, then
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. If I can jump on that, I rode a banana peel towards stupidity as a younger man. I was in a successful band in college, and we were touring, and had, sold all these tickets and shit. And the music, in and of itself, was like ridiculous. It was like we were trying to be Fish, and we were wearing backwards baseball caps, but people liked that shit, and we were selling it successfully. And so it pushed me artistically further away from my voice as a songwriter. Got into the business, worked at record companies, gained a positive reputation as a piano player, not as a songwriter first. And so on a few of the sessions that I was playing piano on, I would get writer credit, which was very kind of the artists involved. This long story short, I had multiple cuts by the time I was 32, 33, and I still really couldn't write a song. And it wasn't until, I think just after my 33rd birthday, I got into a songwriting group that forced me to write a song a week. The first 6 months in this group were painful. I wrote the shittiest songs, just awful. Like, it makes my skin crawl when I think about how bad, vapid lyrics and like really predictable chord changes and the whole bit. But I got angry, and that was productive for me, and my anger spawned my artist voice, and so I now know how to write pretty razor sharp, slightly uncomfortable, really personal songs that ring the bell. And I've had cuts since, and I mean, it's, again, I'm now to a place where I can comfortably listen to my early artist career material without wanting to kill myself, but you probably won't feel as lucky.
Someday we'll all get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's open it to Q&A. Anyone have any questions? Yes?
What advice would you give to somebody that's starting production or kind of finding their way, but feel like they're stuck?
Stuck at what?
I guess just the whole technical thing of producing, if you're all by yourself, YouTube videos and things, I feel like if you don't have a mentor, somebody there show you sometimes, you can just feel stuck, personally me. And sometimes, I get frustrated because I'm I don't know how to do this one thing, and I'm trying to look for a way to on YouTube or something. So I guess just if you're new starting out, just advice on you're just starting out.
Keep it simple. What I find, I don't know if maybe you can give me some feedback if this is your case. I find what a lot of people is they're like, oh, I want to start learning Logic. Oh, now I need to start learning Ableton. Oh, now I need to start learning Pro Tools. Oh, I need to buy this plugin. Oh, I need to get this in order to do this. Keep your, in the beginning especially, keep it simple. If you buy Logic and you're into Logic, don't switch to Ableton because you feel like you're not getting the results that you want out of Logic. I don't know if that's happening to you, but I do see that with a lot of people that start is, what I tell people is, if you're an artist, like an artist, and you're given, every color, every type of colored pencil, every color paint, every type of paintbrush, every color paper, different canvases, where do you begin? But if you're given even if you're given this white paper and a pencil, then you'll immediately sit down and start making art, like pencil sketch art. So, is that maybe where you're getting stuck? Or are you getting stuck on how to actually execute the ideas in your head?
Yeah, I guess that, and also I just felt I have Logic and Ableton.
Yep, stick to one to start. If you're having trouble, stick to one program.
Yeah, and I guess I I see a lot of I'm looking on the electronic space, and I see a lot of people use Ableton more. So I was okay, maybe I should use Ableton, it's more professional or whatever.
That's right.
But now I realize
You know,
Logic is easier than starting.
Right. Whatever tool you're using, our industry, we always have, industry standards, but I think at this point, you don't have to know Pro Tools to make a record, I think that's all gone by the wayside.
Mix records in Logic.
Right.
And those hit records made on Fruity Loops.
Exactly. So, whatever tool you're most comfortable working in, that's the one to use, because your listeners don't care what you made it in. They just care if the song speaks to them, right? So whatever you work in best is what to do. But I think also you're doing going to conferences like this and meeting people. It's so easy for all of us to sit in our little rooms and make records and not speak to anybody, and I'm super guilty of that as well. But I made my career by going to shows, being part of the scene, meeting like-minded people who are my friends and also my clients and also artists who I respect, and just being out and being around people making great stuff is going to bleed into your work and it's going to inspire you, and then you have people you can reach out to and call and say, hey, I'm stuck on this, I don't know how to use this compressor to get the sound or whatever, and someone can tell you, but that's an easier, more direct path to understanding than, you know, going down a YouTube rabbit hole and then, you know, you never quite get exactly what you want.
There are different types of learning, and I think that especially now and geographically, are you in New York, are you in Manhattan, or are you here on Long Island? Okay, good. You know, maybe see if you can pick up an internship. I don't know how much free time you have, but the best learning, I think, is direct. You know, find a mentor who's really willing to share their expertise with you in exchange for some free labor. I think it's usually a win-win.
And also something you could do at home if you're not at work or even on the train is listen. This may sound really broad. Listen to everything. Like if you're inspired by a specific type of music, listen to everything in that genre. Listen to everything in general. But listen to everything in that genre and go, I like that sound. How do I make that sound? And sit there in logic and go, okay, and, you know, it's very bass heavy. All right, maybe import some kind of sound that's similar to it and start EQing. Learn a little bit about the tools you have to shape sounds and figure out how those other sounds were made. And then that just becomes something else in your toolbox. Like, I know how to do this now. And one day, maybe I'll incorporate that. And if not, that's okay too, because you still learned something. Just by listening and turning knobs in a computer.
That's good feedback too. Something I was guilty of as a younger man was being closed off to certain genres or certain sound styles or whatever, and it's like, that is really antithetical to progress. You have to, at a point, open yourself up and ask yourself, what is it about this style of music that offends you, and how can you benefit from that, and how can you learn from it, how can you employ it in other areas, or maybe you're just a dick, maybe you're not a good person, you know, I don't know. You gotta figure that out.
Hopefully that's not your problem.
No, it's not. Yeah, don't throw rotten potatoes. It's good. All right, well, anyone else, question? Yo.
Yeah. What do you guys do to clear your ears for like this cleanser? Like,
Q-tips.
auditory You've been like mixing for a while, just doing work in the studio, and your ears just kind of become numb to the stuff that you had to step out.
Yeah. Podcasts.
I was gonna say the exact same thing.
Yeah, I feel
NPR clears it all out.
Yeah, it's fine. I find it important to have interests that are not music related. You know, if I'm in the studio mixing for 12 hours, the last thing I'm gonna do is go home and put on a record. You know, it's just, because it's just gonna drive me crazy and I'm gonna be comparing and all this kind of stuff. So I'll put on a basketball game, we'll put on a podcast. It's something different where I'm not thinking about what I was just obsessing on.
Right, I do stuff that's more kinetic. I'll go play basketball or go for a walk or a run in silence just to really clear the space. Because usually when you're doing that type of focused listening, you're also just sitting on your ass doing that. And so I feel a great need to move after a long session.
Taking a break like that and getting out, like I said, using kinetic or listening to something non-musical, you know, if you are working all the time, you do need those breaks because you come back at it much fresher. You know, if you were, you know, I can think of those, you know, those weeks where you're working 14, 18 hours a day trying to get a record done. And, you know, usually, if it goes past the 6th day, by the 7th day, everybody's about to be at each other's throats. And you start to really lose perspective over what you're doing. Just a day off and, like, you know, going for a jog or getting to the park or going to the beach, which is things I typically never do when I was first, you know, I mean, those are things that I've learned to do as I've gotten older, but just getting out and getting yourself into a different headspace so you can come back at it fresher, like, really helps an incredible amount.
Yeah, one of the best things you can do is just leave. Just stop.
Go outside, take a walk.
Yeah, I'll go for a walk. I'll put my earplugs in. You know, I always carry some kind of earplug that will, you know, stop sound from getting in my ear. It won't be the Apple earbuds. It'll be in-ears. It'll be some kind of earplugs formed to my ear. Like, I highly recommend getting those because, especially in the city, it's loud. It's really loud. So just putting something in your ear to stop the noise as best you can and just leave. Like, go out, go for a walk, call one of your friends, get some dinner or something, quiet location, as quiet as possible, but just get out. And you know what, you wake up the next day, if you know you go to sleep that night, and you can pinpoint the problem almost right away when you play that song for the first time that day. It was so ingrained in your head the day before that it just became a part of this constant noise that you're listening to. You come in that next morning, you hit play, you go, what the hell is that? And you can find it, fix your problem. It does help, especially in mixing.
Yeah.
Yeah, gaining perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because during, you can get way too focused on what you're doing. Even during the session, like if you can take that 45-minute break and come back to it, you know, you're focusing on one thing for so long. All of a sudden now you're just focused on that one thing, and you know, getting that sort of breath of fresh air. Even if you can only do 15 minutes, get out of that room for 15 minutes, go do something else, and then come back to it.
And if it's a dark room, find a bright room. That helps too sometimes.
Not for me.
Yeah, I think burnout is a big problem for creators, and especially people that work alone. And I had an experience recently where I was having an experience sort of like what you were talking about, just specifically with mixing. And I really overlistened to something and burned out in it, and ended up turning in a mix I really didn't like. And it was the first time that you know, burnout actually caused a problem. And it was really shocking and scary to realize sort of what I had done. You know, it was fine, no one was hurt, but I was like, oh my God, I burned out and I made a bad decision, and I didn't wait till the next morning to turn something in. And so, yeah, I think it's really good to be hyper aware of when you're acting crazy and losing sight of your center.
Again, a team.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, if you have somebody that can double check you, that's important, you know. And deadlines are deadlines, and, you know, don't miss your deadlines. If you got to work all night, you know, you got to do that. That's part of the job. But if you don't have that hard deadline, like, it's all right to sleep. You know, there's no awards for working the most hours. There's no awards for being the tiredest. That's just like, that's counterintuitive. You know, when you go online, everyone's like, I hustle, no sleep, whatever, cool. I sleep every night, so it's real.
Yeah.
But when I wake up the next day and I go back in the studio, I'm like, okay, where is this song? Oh, this isn't as garbage as I thought it was. This is pretty good. I just gotta do this right here and X, Y, and Z, and I'm done. Where I would have spent another 6 hours chasing the wrong thing the night before.
Right. You have another question?
Just going back to something Chris said about the earplugs. I'm a little older than you guys. Almost all the musicians my age have hearing loss and tinnitus ringing in the ears. Take care of your health. Take care of your.
Well, I'm glad you said that. For me, you know, as you know, first of all, I've exposed my ears to incredibly loud SPLs throughout the years, and I still listen pretty damn loud. I posted out an SPL video the other day, and I was listening at 110 dB, which is ridiculously loud. And I'm used to that. But I'm not going to do that for an hour. If I do that for an hour, my ears are going to be ringing. I'm not going to be able to hear anything. I'm going to maybe do that for 5 minutes, which is not entirely recommended. But you know, you're supposed to be listening about 85 dB. 85 dB, you can listen, you know, for 8 hours. You know, they say without hearing loss. Even then, you don't want to listen to something for 85 dB for 8 hours straight. You know, typically, I'm trying to take that 10-minute break every hour. And I'm going to average, and sometimes I'm listening quietly, sometimes I'm listening loud. I'm not listening at 110 dB for an hour. If a client wants to do that, I'm going to step out of the room and take my break. But it's, you know, taking, you know, to protect your ears, you can't listen to music that loud for very long. You know, and even when I am mixing, sometimes you're in the middle of a loud session and you do have to work for 3-4 hours straight, and it is kind of loud in there. And that's when your ears start to ring. They say, well, if your ears are ringing, answer them. You know, if your ears are ringing, take a break. You know, because that means you're beginning to mess with your hearing. To protect your ears, I mean, if you have to be in a control room and it is 110 dB and it is going to be like that for an hour, get a pair of earplugs. Back when I was coming up, you were looked down upon if you were to put a pair of earplugs in your ears. These days, studios have them sitting right in the control room, you know, because people know you have to protect your ears. But the biggest thing that protects your ears is those breaks. You know, if I'm in a mixing situation and I'm listening loud and my ears start to ring, I will take a break for as long as I have to for my ears to stop ringing. Because it is scary. I've had the situation where you get temporary threshold shift, where you go home and try to watch TV and you got to turn the TV really loud because it sounds really quiet. You know, it's like if you go to a loud club and you leave the club and now you got to yell at the people that you went to the club with to have a conversation. That's scary because that's, you know, the next step is really hearing loss. That's when I would listen really loud for way too long. You know, now I know it, now I'm smart enough to know that you got to take breaks. And really, like, you know, and every hour or two, it really should be every hour about a 10-minute break, 15-minute break, if you can do that, or every 2 hours, tops. Take that 15-minute break where you're listening to quiet.
And also, just as a kind of a blanket statement when listening to music, or mixing rather, if it sounds good quiet, it'll most likely sound good loud. But if it sounds good loud, it might sound like garbage quiet.
Yeah.
We like loud things. It always sounds better when it's loud. You take the same song and you play it back to back and one's a little louder, you're gonna like that one better. So don't mix loud. Check loud. You can record loud. If an artist needs to really hear the beat on loop for an hour and it's loud, get out. Get out or have earplugs at the bare minimum, really.
We have time for one more.
A nice studio trick instead of wearing earplugs is to put on a pair of headphones.
Yes.
That way it doesn't look like, you're wearing earplugs, but you're...
Especially if you have some kind of headphone amp.
Yes.
So since our songwriting is all consumer based, and when you release a song outside of your team, and they have common people critique your song, to what extent do you take those critiques and put it in effect, or do you just ignore them and say, this is the team I made it, everything like this?
Well, that's somebody else because I got it.
I think, look, my general policy on the internet is don't read the comment section. That's where people generally like to make themselves feel better by making you feel bad. Someone's going to always have something negative to say. Someone's going to have something positive to say. You can't get too high or too low. You're talking about releasing it outside your team. Well, you got to do what you need to do artistically, but also remember that team you put in place, ideally, like we're talking about, for their honesty. So if your whole team that you trust is telling you, yo, that's not the one, you can, if you don't trust them, then you're not trusting yourself because you put them around you. If you have something else you want to say artistically, do that, but just you can't get too high or low on anybody's critique.
I've seen people put the wrong team around them and make some really terrible, almost, I'd say, career-ending decisions. Because they start putting out music that's inferior. When you're talking about the general public, are you writing, you have to put it into perspective of, are you writing music for yourself that you are going to listen to? You gotta give the people what they want. That's a very true expression when it comes to music. We're writing music so it can be popular to the masses. For the most part, the records I work on are pop records. Many different genres encompass pop to me, whether it's rock, hip hop, R&B. Those are the types of records I've worked on my entire career. Those are all records we're trying, we're not trying to. People are making music, and that is, it's meant for a lot of people to like. And you got to make that decision for yourself. Are you making records for a very select, small group of people, or are you making records that you want the world to really listen to? So if only your team likes the record, and when you play it for the general public, they all hate it, maybe you're doing something wrong, or maybe that's not your market. The general public is not your market. It's a much smaller market than that.
Well, it could be a marketing problem. I have a more sort of Zen approach to it generally. It's like what you're doing when you adapt your artistry based on feedback is also adjusting your audience, intentionally or not. And so if the audience that you've reached with your song, if you've reached 1,000 people with that song and 800 of them really don't like it, well, chances are not only are they going to say that they don't like it, but they're going to self-select out. And so then you've got your audience of 200 people, and then you remarket based on the feedback that you have. Those 800 people don't like it. So then you might alter it to make it more pleasing to those 800 people, but then you have the 200 people left. My point is, you're almost always better catering to the people who are willing to attend than you are trying to appease the people who don't like what you're serving. So whatever it is that you're doing, I would say double down on disaster and do the shit out of whatever got rid of those 800 people, because it's probably going to delight the other 200.
Yeah, I think it's sort of what you were saying earlier about figuring out what you're good at and what is unique about your voice or your skill, and doubling down. Because there's so many people making music. I was just at South by Southwest, and it was so humbling. Obviously, I know there's a lot of musicians in the world, but being there, realizing how many good, successful musicians there are. Seeing a reminder like that, I was thinking about this, right? And why am I doing this? And why are any of us doing this? And ultimately, it's because we feel like we have to, right? We don't really have a choice. And it's an interesting, sort of strange, can feel sort of narcissistic, spending all your time sharing your feelings and, you know, presupposing that people want to hear it, but, you know, I think that anyone connecting with what you're doing is sort of validating, makes it not a narcissistic endeavor. Yeah.
So do we have time? I think we're going to take quick parting shots, maybe 60 seconds each. Is that cool? Chris, you want to start us off with some, you want to try and like tie a pretty bow on this whole thing and say something massively insightful?
Yeah.
Being put on the spot gives me gas, but I don't know about you.
Well, I guess to tie it up nicely is make sure that you really love what you're doing, because if you don't, then you're going to churn out some pretty bad stuff, and that's not going to feel very fulfilling. Love what you do, and if you can't figure out a way to make the sounds that you want coming from your head come out of the speakers, work even harder, because it is possible. Whatever you hear in your head, especially these days, you can make it. You can make any noise, honestly. It's kind of awesome sometimes and terrible most of the time. But I guess love what you do and make sure that you put your heart into it, because people will be able to tell if you did or didn't. They'll be able to tell if it's really you or if it's people pushing you to do something. I guess that's kind of it.
Right on.
Love it.
Holden?
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking recently about this because I was talking to someone that I'm working with about what their goals are. And she said, I just want to play big shows. I want to be Lord. I was like, that's not a goal, to be Lord. Like, you know? Yeah, so I think a really important thing, which is similar to what you're saying, is just, I mean, it's not an easy career to choose. It's not easy. I mean, for some few people it is, but for most people it's really hard work and it's lonely and you don't make a lot of money a lot of the time. But yeah, if you really love your work and you're doing it for the right reasons, I mean, there's no right reasons, but if you're doing it, maybe if you are inspired by the process rather than by the result, I think it still feels worth it. And I think you can continue to check in with yourself and be inspired if you take care of your artist self. I'm going to give a shout out to my old songwriting teacher back there, Mike, who a couple years ago got me into journaling. And it's just one example of a part of my routine that wakes me up and reminds me why I'm doing this. Because it would be very cool to be Lord, but ultimately I'm a writer. And that is just one reminder every day that I'm a writer. And so I think finding parts of your routine that can remind you are really important.
I'd like to go back to something that you were saying earlier, when you were saying you were like sort of imagining like the label you'd get signed to and like the flyers. You know, I heard an expression not so long ago. It said, "Stop stringing and tune your instrument and play music." Meaning, you know, don't take too much time like trying to figure out what you're going to do. Just start doing something. You know, just jump right into it and work hard every day work hard every day to accomplish goals or tasks. You know, don't think about what you don't like. Sit there and make lists of all the things you're going to do and all the things you need to buy, and you know, like just start doing those things. And once you gain those momentum of accomplishing those tasks every day, then you start to accomplish goals and things start to move forward. Rather than planning on what you're going to be doing, just start doing those things. Of course, you got to plan to a certain degree, but I think you kind of understand what I'm saying. You know, stop stringing into your instrument and just play music. Like, don't focus on what you have to do to get there. Just start getting there. And back to what I think kind of everybody's saying here is, it does take a lot of work to make good records. People, you know, it is our job to make it seem like someone just stepped in front of a microphone and this amazing performance just came out in one take and that was it. But I can tell you that that's not the way the records that I work on get made. You know, some of the records that, you know, that sound the most effortless, we have put them so much work into getting those records to sound so effortless. It's take after take after take and comping stuff together. And, you know, we're talking about comping syllables of words all together. And that's just talking about, you know, vocal performance. It's scrutinizing like sometimes I feel like I'm hand sewing a record together. You know, it's scrutinizing every millisecond of every single song. to make it sound like, hey, we just went to the studio and did this in 2 hours. It's like, no, it took us like, weeks, if not months sometimes to get the end result. Like, it takes a lot of hard work to get records. I mean, sure, sometimes you're gonna do something that does go much quicker than that. But for the most part, it is a lot of hard work to make super awesome sounding records. It's not easy. Not to say it can't be done. It's just, it is, if you gotta work 14 hours a day, 6 days a week to make an amazing finished product, that's what you gotta do, because that's what other people have done to get it.
I got all kinds of things. I think my main thing is kind of artsy-fartsy a little bit, but trust the song. The song will tell you what decisions you need to make as a producer. Does the second chorus need a lift, whatever? Well, what does the song say? Like, is it asking for it? Like, in your gut that you feel like it wants to go somewhere. Well, trust that instinct, because the song, everything is about serving the song. Even the artist, and certainly, the production engineering staff, we're making a song, right? So everything needs to serve that. It's not about, oh, well, Willie Green knows about his drums, so drums gotta sound like this. Well, what if the song doesn't want that? Am I just gonna put these old drums on there because that's what I do? But now the song is wrong, right? So that's a mistake, so that's a failure in my approach. Trust the art that we're making, and if you're serving the art, if everybody on your team is serving the art, you're moving in the right direction, you're gonna make the right choices.
Very cool. It's been a really productive panel. I really appreciate the perspectives that were shared. It was very positive, and I like to try and give an actionable or sort of a philosophical thing that you can actually do, because oftentimes in these panels you might walk away without knowing, all right, well, that was all great shit, but what do I do with it? So it's a networking business. In the interest of trying to say something a little bit new, it's going to be all about who you work with, because the longer I've worked in music, the more I've noticed that it's not so much the arrow, it's the archer, or the archers that shoot the arrows. And so your network, your classmates, your friends, your mentors are really going to dictate a lot of what you're able to accomplish in music, not to say anything of the hard work of crafting excellent songs. Be good to the people in your world, because you're going to see the same people on the way up that you'll see on the way down. And all those cliches are really true, but the harder you network and the more you're aware of the community that you're a part of, chances are the more you'll be able to accomplish what it is that you want to do in music. And with that, I thank you guys very much for listening.
Networking. You guys feel free to reach out to me with any questions. pauljfalcone.com. And I just started a podcast. And it's called the Pro-Fools Podcast. You can email me at theprofoolspodcast@gmail.com, and we answer questions on the podcast. So if you guys have questions about how you want to get things done, feel free to shoot us an email. We'll answer it on the podcast if not answer you directly. Pro Fools like Pro Tools.
And some of you
but with a
are
dash.
doing mentor sessions here. Okay, so almost everybody's doing mentor sessions, so if you didn't sign up, you can find a way to sign up. So get one-on-one with them over the next hour. Also stick around, because our last discussion is a Q&A on starting your own music festival. So stick around for that, okay? Give it up for everybody here.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm uniquely in it.
Oh, you are? Oh, was it your song?
Yeah, it was the last one on there.
There you go.
Funny, but that's
I love Unique.
Hey, me too. I'm taking it as glass half full, right?
I would say, yeah. I'd say other.
You're not my audience.
Big folks have heard work.
I think so. I think so.
Take care.
Down.